Sukhoi Gar, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of my Legends of Star Wars video series. This is more preparation for my next video, so yeah, just look forward to that. It should come out sometime after this video, hopefully not too long. So without further ado, let us begin Legends of Star Wars, The Wounds in the Force. The Sith Triumvirate was an incarnation of the Sith Order that was led by the three Sith Lords Darth Traya, Darth Nihilus, and Darth Sion. The Sith Triumvirate was responsible for what is considered to be the first Jedi Purge at the height of the Dark Wars. The result of this shadowy purge was the death of hundreds of and possibly thousands of Jedi before it finally ended with the death of Darth Traya. While it didn't have the same power as earlier or later Sith orders, the Sith Triumvirate was one of the most dangerous Sith orders to plague the Old Republic. Also known as Kreia, Darth Traya's early life is mostly unknown, including what planet she was originally from. What is known is that she served as a Jedi historian prior to the Mandalorian Wars and achieved the rank of Jedi Master. Among the Padawans that Kreia trained was a young, gifted Jedi that would later be known as Revan. By the end of her career as a Jedi, the Jedi Council, and particular Atris, considered her students to be failures because they had followed Revan to fight the Mandalorians. When Kreia was exiled by the Jedi for her role in training Revan, she began to question her own beliefs as well. However, instead of following Revan to war like many others had done, Kreia retraced the steps until she reached Malachor V and the Atreus Academy. There, Kreia studied Sith manuscripts left behind by the ancient Sith Empire. While Kreia tried to fight the influence of the Sith teachings, she fell under the spell and took the name Darth Traya, the Lord of Betrayal. It was also during this time that she learned about a long-forgotten legacy of the Sith in the unknown regions. After the Jedi Civil War, Traya gathered the remnants of Revan's Sith Empire and began searching for individuals to serve as her Sith apprentices. She came across two individuals that were what she called wounds in the Force and took them on as her apprentices, Darth Nihilus and Darth Sion. She taught her two pupils power beyond imagination, but they became disillusioned by her teachings. After conspiring, Nihilus and Sion attacked Traya and the Traya's core and stripped her of her power before sending her into exile. While her apprentices began their campaign against the Jedi, Traya returned to Republic space, seeking out Mitra Surik, the Jedi exile. Traya eventually found Surik aboard the Harbinger and took her aboard the Ebon Hawk, just barely escaping a Sith attack led by Darth Sion. When the ship arrived at the Paragus II facility, Traya and Surik formed a force bond. Later, Traya fought against her former apprentice Darth Sion, who cut off her arm, but she managed to escape. Because of the force bond between them, Surik and Traya were forced to remain close, and there was concern that the death of one may kill the other. However, at the same time, over the course of her travels, Traya manipulated her companions into helping her with her own plans by helping Surik at the same time. Traya, along with Surik and the others, participated in the Onderon Civil War, and Traya attempted to manipulate Surik into having Queen Talia execute General Vaklu. While Surik refused, the Queen still gave the order to execute the general. After this, she realized that Surik posed a threat to herself and the Sith Triumvirate. After the Onderon Civil War, Traya gave false information to one of Nihilus's agents about the Jedi presence on Telos. She then convinced Surik to go to the Jedi Academy's ruins on Dantooine to meet with the Jedi Masters. When the Jedi Masters on Dantooine attempted to strip the Force from Surik, Traya intervened and used Force Drain on them, killing all three. It was at this point she openly assumed her identity as Darth Traya. Traya then was taken to Telos to be judged by Atris. Traya then revealed that Atris herself had become corrupted by the Sith holocrons she had gathered, but afterwards Atris was defeated by Surik. Traya then returned to Malachor 5 with the intention of sacrificing herself in order to open a larger wound in the Force to destroy the Force itself. However, Traya chose to wait for Surik to travel to Malachor 5 before carrying out her plan. Surik then traveled to Malachor 5 after killing Darth Nihilus. While she was on Malachor 5, she killed Darth Sion, leaving Traya the only remaining member of the Sith Triumvirate. Traya was finally killed in the Trayus Core by Mitra Surik, not long after her body was destroyed along with Malachor 5 by the mass shadow generator. In the end, Darth Traya was an unconventional Sith Lord who used the dark side as a tool instead of for its full power.
But I did not walk alone. To be united by hatred is a fragile alliance at best.
The human male who would one day become known as Darth Nihilus was alive at the conclusion of the Mandalorian Wars. During the war, he lost his friends and family as well as the will to live. He was present on the planet Malachor 5 during the final battle of the Mandalorian Wars in 3960 BBY, when Mitra Surik activated the mass shadow generator that killed almost everyone on the planet. Nihilus, however, survived, but was trapped on the planet by the mass shadows that surrounded it. It was after this that he started to feel a deep and consuming hunger. In order to sate his hunger, he drained the life force of another survivor. While his hunger was temporarily sated, it continued to grow to the point where absorbing survivors barely did anything to appease it, but he grew in power at the same time. After Darth Malak was killed, Revan's Sith Empire became fractured. Nihilus was discovered by Darth Traya and was told that she could teach him how to devour entire worlds if he came to study at the Trayus Academy. Together with Traya and Darth Sion, they formed the Sith Triumvirate, Nihilus taking up the title of Lord of Hunger. As promised, Traya taught Nihilus how to harness the hunger to make him stronger. Nihilus did consume planets on several occasions in order to appease his hunger. Along with his hunger, his power grew exponentially until he eventually surpassed his master. There was a disagreement among the Sith Triumvirate as to how to destroy the Jedi, straining the already fragile alliance. This finally came to a head when Nihilus and Sion joined forces, confronted Traya in the Trayus Core, combining their powers and cutting off Traya from the Force. While Sion began attacking the Jedi, Nihilus traveled to the fringes of known space with a fleet. Aboard his flagship, the Ravager, Nihilus began feeding upon the largest deposits of Force energy that he could find. 4 years after the exiling Traya, Nihilus and Sion reunited the fractured Sith to take full control of the Order. However, all of Nihilus's power came at a price. His physical body became eroded and consumed by his hunger. To solve the problem, he ripped his spirit from his body and bound it to his robes, armor, and mask. In 3952 BBY, the Jedi Master Atris organized a large gathering of Jedi on the planet Qatar and leaked the information as an attempt to lure Nihilus. When Nihilus reached Qatar, he overwhelmed the Miraluka and drained the planet, destroying most of what was left of the Jedi Order. When Nihilus visited Qatar after the attack, he discovered a Miraluka woman named Visas Mar who had survived the attack. He took Mar up to the Ravager and began training her as his shadow hand. During the Onderon Civil War, Nihilus allied himself with General Vaklu, who led the separatist movement. He also established a base on the moon of Duxon inside the tomb of Frida Nad. After feeling a disturbance in the Force, Nihilus sent Mar to capture Mitra Surik and bring the woman before him. However, Mar was captured by Surik and swayed to serve her. Nihilus' group that was conducting a ritual on Duxon was attacked by Surak's allies when she became involved in the Onderon civil war. The practitioners were killed, but not before the ritual was completed. Nihilus' forces engaged Surak and her allies in the palace of Queen Talia in Iziz. His plans were thwarted when General Vaklu was executed and the Separatists were quashed. Nihilus finally met his end in the Battle of Telos IV at the hands of the combined efforts of Mitra Surak, Mandalore the Preserver, and Visas Mar. However, Nihilus' spirit survived, attached to his holocron, and appeared infrequently throughout the years, most recent being when he was consulted by Darth Krayt along with Darth Bane and Darth Andedu. Nihilus is one of the most unusual Sith Lords in galactic history, and while his legacy is minor, he was still one of the most dangerous Sith of his era. The human who would become Darth Sion was born over 4,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. Sion was for a long time susceptible to infirmity and pain, and combined together he considered them intolerable, so he lived a life steeped in hatred. Sion served in the Great Sith War as a Sith Marauder under the Dark Lord Exar Kun. After surviving numerous encounters with the Jedi, he started to think himself immortal. When he was eventually struck down, instead of dying, the pain welled up to antagonizing levels. This drove Sion to rise up and strike down his would-be killer with all of his rage. Sion discovered that through the dark side he could hold together his decomposing body, making him virtually immortal. However, this came at a cost, causing him excruciating pain and forcing him to focus on the rage. During the Jedi Civil War, Sion served as a Sith Lord in Revan's Sith Empire. Sion was at the Sith Academy on Korriban in the final days of the war and saw the Sith start to turn on each other. At the end of the Jedi Civil War, Sion was found by Darth Traya along with Darth Nihilus. The three Sith Lords allied together and formed the Sith Triumvirate based out of Malachor V with the goal of destroying the Jedi. However, discontent began to grow among the three Sith Lords, and the alliance between them began to become strained. Finally, Sion and Nihilus joined forces to overthrow Traya, finally stripping her of the Force and casting her out into exile. During the Dark Wars, Sion killed numerous Jedi, nearly driving them to extinction by 3954 BBY. Sion and Nihilus united what was left of Revan's Sith Empire under the banner of the Sith Triumvirate. On Korriban, Sion led the Jedi Master Lona Vash into a trap and imprisoned her in the abandoned Sith Academy. Following rumors of the last surviving member of the Jedi Order, Sion began to focus on the Jedi exile Mitra Surak. Sion went after Surak aboard the Republic warship Harbinger. Sion was taken aboard the Harbinger, believed to be a corpse because of the decomposing nature of his body, while his assassins snuck aboard the ship. He managed to take over the ship with his assassins, but Surak escaped aboard the Ebon Hawk. Sion followed the Hawk aboard the Harbinger to the mining planet of Peragus II. He fought against Darth Traya, who had stayed behind to distract him. Sion managed to cut her off her hand before she escaped. The Harbinger was then caught up in the destruction of the Peragus asteroid belt, but Sion survived the explosion. Sion was enraged that Traya would sacrifice herself for Surak, who he considered to be weaker than himself. At this point, he swore to destroy all that Traya held dear, including Surak. Sion encountered Surak on Korriban when she was searching for Lona Vash. Sion killed Vash and sent his assassins after Surak. Eventually Surak found Vash's body and tried to leave the academy, but Sion intercepted her and her allies. Sion warned Surak that Traya would in time destroy her before the two fought. Surak fled the battle after realizing she couldn't beat Sion in a fight. Sion developed a respect for Surak and allowed her to leave. When Sion returned to Malachor V, he was soon joined by Darth Traya, who forced him into serving as a final line of defense against Mitra Surak. Sion finally met his end at the hands of Mitra Surak, but not before warning the Jedi that Traya would attempt to bend her to her will. Darth Sion had little impact on the galaxy after his death, but was arguably one of the Sith Lords that came the closest to true immortality. Unlike other incarnations of the Sith Order throughout history, the Sith Triumvirate had little to no impact on the galaxy as a whole after they were defeated. The only real influence the Triumvirate had were the rare appearances of Nihilus' holocron or rogue Baron sages who gave offerings to Darth Sion. The Sith Triumvirate was one of the most dangerous incarnations of the Sith Order to plague the Old Republic. While they lacked a true Sith legacy, the Triumvirate was the first incarnation of the Sith Order to truly pose a threat to the Jedi Order, and may have been one of the most effective. The terror brought about by the Dark Wars that plagued the Republic and forced the Jedi to rebuild nearly from the ground up. All in all, the Sith Triumvirate was one of the deadliest incarnations of the Sith Order, and should not be discounted despite their lack of a true legacy. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the Sith Triumvirate, one of the greatest incarnations of the ancient Sith Order. So you guys are probably wondering after all this time, what exactly do I have planned next? Well, that's a surprise, and I am not going to give it away. I will see you then, and until then, may the dark side be with you, always.